Good morning, folks. This is Mr. Dan coming to you from the Landscape Design Classroom, and today we're going to talk about the Place of U.S. Forest. So our main ideas here, where are the main forest ecosystems of the United States? Why are they there? How do they work? And what is their value to human life? So why are forests so important? Forest land has 10% or more of its ground cover or ground area covered by a canopy provided by an upper layer of trees. This is important because it offers shade to the ground and actually creates bare ground whenever there's too much shade because grass can't grow underneath it. So there's 747 million acres of U.S. forest currently. About a third of the land area in the U.S. is covered by forests. Moving on, forests are classified by the kind of trees they contain. They contain deciduous trees, which would drop their leaves in the winter, have broad leaves, and produce hardwood. That is wood with true vessels. So these trees will they'll drop their leaves in the fall. They'll typically turn anywhere from a brown to red to orange and come off. So that's how you can tell if they're deciduous or not. And evergreen trees typically have needle-like leaves year-round. They can be broadleaf though. They are classified as conifers, produce seed and cones, and have soft wood. These are wood without true vessels. So there's 6 major types. You have northern forest, which are tree groups such as white, red, jack pine, spruce fir, aspen birch, and maple beech birch. Found across northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and up into the northeast. And also found in northern Ohio and down into central Indiana. The picture down on the right is a picture of a northern forest in New Hampshire with a birch. Moving on to central forest, these are oak, hickory tree groups, widespread in the central eastern United States, found in southern Pennsylvania, northern Virginia, most of West Virginia, southern Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, southern Michigan, Illinois, Missouri, and eastern Iowa. And can be as far south as eastern Texas and as far north as central Wisconsin and central Minnesota. So we fall under the southern Pennsylvania area, so we could be considered a central forest area. Southern forest, these are oak pine, loblolly shortleaf pine, and longleaf splash pine groups. These extend from southern Virginia southward across the Carolinas into Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and eastern Texas. Bottomland forest, these are oak gum cypress tree group found along the Ohio River at the southern border of Illinois, extending southward along the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico. Western interior forest, ponderosa pine, lodgepole pine, Douglas fir, white pine, western larch, fir spruce, and some western hardwood tree groups. So you'll find these in states such as Colorado, seen in the picture down on the right, Arizona, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and California. And if you can tell from the way I'm talking about these, some of these forests can actually mix together, creating their own specific type of ecosystem, but these are pretty broad-based. So moving on to our last one, West Coast forest. These are hemlock, sitka spruce, redwoods, and some western hardwood groups found in Northern California, Western Oregon, and Washington. And if you ever get a chance, these are some of the nicest looking forests in the world, and I would definitely suggest going out to visit these areas. Abiotic or non-living factors, so the conditions that determine where forests are found and what type they are. Abiotic factors include temperature, climate, precipitation, soil types, and deciduous forest, also called temperate forest, grow where soils are good, annual precipitation between 30 and 90 inches, can tolerate cold season, require warm, humid summers for new growth. Differing light requirements lead to layering and succession of tree species, and layers provide habitat for wildlife. Coniferous forests, poorer soil, can withstand extremes of cold, heat, and drought, can survive with precipitation averaging 14 to 40 inches per year, require more sunlight, fewer lower limbs, fewer tree species, and it's a poor wildlife habit. So for the most part, wildlife actually prefer a deciduous forest over coniferous. And this is also because some of the coniferous trees or evergreen trees actually produce a poison on the pine, and eating pine in general is a little bit rougher than eating deciduous leaves. So what is succession? When one community of plants and animals is replaced by another over time. As plants compete, the best competitors become dominant. Typically, these are the ones that grow the tallest and the thickest, because the taller they grow, the more shade they provide going down below, and that will kill off other plant species. Wildlife changes with the habitat. This is the sear stage, which is the beginning. The climax stage is a stable community that will survive under existing climate. And some other terms you might hear from that is first succession, secondary succession, third succession, depending on the level of forest you're in and the level that your trees are at currently. So third level succession would look much more mature than a first level. Coniferous succession examples starts with pioneering species that are least shade tolerant, such as barrowland, shrubs, alder. Climax stage species would be more of a Douglas fir and hemlock. Just touch on hemlock for a second. The hemlocks in our area are currently being taken out by Woolly adelgid, so at some point they're maybe non-existent in our world anymore. So they might actually move this down to more of a pioneering species at some point, because it will be taken out by disease. Deciduous succession examples starts with pioneering species such as barrowland, shrubs, oak, and hickory. And some climax would be ones such as the maple that you see down in the picture on the right here of a mature sugar maple in Wisconsin. So how a new succession gets started. So primary succession starts with barrowland as the result of a glacier, landslide, or volcano. Secondary succession starts where vegetation has been removed but soil left undisturbed, such as by clear cutting. And interruption can occur by fire, flood, logging, farming, road building, basically anything that's going to disturb the land to a higher extent and have to restart that succession process. So what is the value for forest? Over 5,000 wood products, 1.6 million jobs, important in natural cycles, any environmental benefits, improved water quality, reduces erosion, better air quality, absorbs carbon dioxide and traps dust, soil conservation, slows runoff and reduces wind erosion, and wildlife habitat. So depending on your level of succession that you have going on, you're going to see different types of wildlife. So if you end up like completely coniferous area, you're not going to see a ton of variety in your wildlife. But if you have more of a deciduous forest that derived from secondary succession, then you're going to see a lot more different species living in that forest. So what's the human impact here? Forest fires. Clear cutting can destroy ecosystems. Forest management increases production. Breeding trees for improved species. And reforestation projects. So the guy down on the right is starting a brand new planting project, trying to bring back some of these forests. But with proper management, you can keep a forest looking pristine, or you just not touch it at all. But we as humans definitely like to get in there and take what we need and kind of just leave it bare. So we definitely need to start adding areas back so we can use those in the future. So who owns the forest? About 2/3 of U.S. forest land is available to grow commercial timber, 19% in national forest, 23% on public land, 9% owned by the forest industry, and 49% is privately owned, mainly in the eastern United States. So we're kind of in the belly of that here. Even age management, forests with trees roughly the same age. Harvesting methods are clear cutting, removing trees all over 1-inch caliper. Shelter wood removes 40 to 60% at once. Seed tree cutting leaves a few well-spaced seeded trees. So these seeded trees that they're laying in there will actually offer off seeds to help sprout more trees around it. So like I said before, with the proper management, we can take what we need and then plant for the future. So uneven age management, growth of trees in 3 or more age groups, allowing for continuous growth and harvesting. I actually prefer this method. So some harvesting methods include group selection, removes trees from areas of 2 acres or less. Individual selection removes selected trees throughout the forest. And then managing private forest, the owner, it's basically all owner decided. So they can clear cut the entire forest or only take out portions of a time or do nothing at all with it. May or may not be properly managed. USDA provides management information and incentives. So if you have some land that you want to start cutting or you want to keep, there's actually some incentives in place that will offer you money to not even touch your forest or to take out certain parts of it once. If you have a grassland, you can actually be given money for keeping a third of it unmowed. So there's a lot of different programs. I would contact somebody at the USDA to explain some of those to you. Managing public forests, lots of debating, definitely a little agreement. Should we preserve native timber forests? These are a lot of different questions, and there's definitely a lot of debate on this. How much timber should be harvested? How does cutting affect ecosystems? And how can we sustain forest for future use? So if we take a look at all of our national forests, I'm kind of more of like the mindset of finding a field to do your planting in and leaving these forests alone. But I understand that there is a need for housing, a lot of different stuff. So there is like a large debate there on how much should be used, if any at all. So multiple use in public forest. Forest Service Multiple Use Act of 1960 requires that national forests be managed for multiple use. So recreation, range, timber, watershed, wildlife, and fish. Various uses may conflict with each other. And I haven't really heard of any instances where any public forests have been closed off at all, but there is definitely areas that are avoided being built in just to preserve nature in that area. So I know that was a lot of information there. That is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions at all, you can contact me down here in the Landscape Design classroom. But have a great day, folks. Thanks for listening.